Hey witches, Tiffany here on Bewitching.Bemused. Today we're going to discuss top 7 times that you should probably not be casting a spell. Now these are just my top 7 reasons, but I'm sure there are plenty of other circumstances making time for spell casting not a very good idea. If you have any of your own that you think are worthy of this list them down in the comments below. So when should you not cast a spell? Number 1, when you're angry. Okay, yes, we all know that having strong emotions fueling a spell is usually a really good thing. But at the same time, you really don't want to be making any rash decisions when you're mad, especially considering the types of spells you're usually going to be casting because you're angry. I'm thinking curses and hexes. Now, I'm not necessarily saying don't cast curses, don't cast hexes. I realistically know that they have their time and place, not for everyone, but for many of us. However, if you've given yourself time to cool down, that allows you, the proper state of mind to weigh the pros and cons, to really consider the consequences. When you're able to do that with a rational mind, if you are still feeling betrayed, hurt, upset about whatever happened, then that is still gonna be plenty of, emotional energy to power your spell. But just make sure you've given yourself the time to really consider things. Number 2, when you're drunk. I think this kind of goes without explanation. But let me elaborate anyways. Whether it's because you're drunk and you've suddenly decided this spell is a good idea, or you already decided to do the spell and then you got drunk and now you're in the mood to do it, it's just not a good idea. Wait till you're sober. Now, I know there are plenty of people who like to smoke a little bit of marijuana before doing spell work because it relaxes them, it helps them get in the right state of mind. And I do think that's a bit different because it doesn't impair the mind the same way that alcohol does. It doesn't affect the mind the same way that alcohol does. So I'm not gonna make a judgment call on marijuana because I really do think that's a personal preference. But alcohol, if you've had a glass or 2 of wine, then sure, hey, but I'm talking when you are drunk. Making the decision to cast a certain spell, it's the same thing as when you're angry. You're not really thinking rationally. Even if it's just a spell because, you love your pet. You're drunk and you realized, I love my pet so much and I need to cast a protection spell on them. Well, that's very kind of you and that's good thinking, but just save it for tomorrow. Because even if the spell itself is a good idea and there's not going to be any consequences that you have to worry about, well, it's really easy to make a mistake. It's easy to make a mistake when you're sober, but when you're drunk, Number 3, when you're unfocused or your energy is just off. Now, both of these I could probably put into 2 separate ones, but let's start off with being unfocused. We all know that our focus is crucial when casting a spell. You need to be able to clear your mind of all wandering thoughts, or at the very least, realize you're having a wandering thought, let it go, and focus on your spell, your intention, and your visualization. This is crucial for the success of a spell. So if you are already unfocused, whether that's because you have a lot of anxiety about something, you're a little bit sleep deprived from the night before, you're hungry, whatever it is, just wait. Now, the other aspect of this is if your energy is just off. If you come home from work and you are frustrated and you are tired, but you can focus fine, but you're just carrying that ickiness around inside of you and you're gonna come home and cast a self-love spell, it's maybe not a good idea. If you're casting something positive but you're feeling a lot of negative emotions, you don't want those to bleed into your work. Number 4, if you're feeling doubtful. If you have any doubts about the consequences of your spell or whether or not you actually want this intention to manifest, don't cast it. Just wait. It doesn't mean don't cast it ever, but take a little time to reflect on what you're doing. Weigh the pros and cons, journal about it, meditate on it, do some divination regarding the outcome. This is for a few reasons. A, you don't want any doubt, or again, any negative feelings to interfere with your intention and bleed into it, affecting the overall outcome of your spell. B, the more doubtful you are about whether or not you actually want this thing, the more likely that your spell just isn't going to succeed. And C, if you aren't really sure that you absolutely want this manifestation or the potential consequences that could come with it, why take the risk? Number 5, you don't know what you're doing. A big foundational rule of magic is never summon something that you don't know how to banish easily. So that's just a safety rule of thumb, and you should always keep that in mind. Never call upon something unless you know how to get rid of them. But this isn't just in regards to spirit communication, summoning, or, leaving out offerings for the Fae, who can be pretty tricky. This really goes for any spell, and part of this is a safety thing. Part of this is also a you don't want to get more than what you're asking for thing. And the final part of it is your spells are reliant on you understanding the purpose behind your actions and the ingredients you're using. If you pulled up a spell online and it tells you to take a certain action or use a certain ingredient, but it doesn't explain to you why, look it up or perhaps replace it with something that makes more sense to you. Sympathetic magic, for instance, is reliant upon the ingredients and the actions that you're committing during the spell mirroring what you actually want to manifest. So if your actions and your ingredients don't line up with that intention to you, then you really lower your chances of your spell completing and successfully. I'm stumbling over my words a lot today. But let's jump back to where I said you don't want to get more than you bargained for. Let's say you have a crush on somebody and you want them to notice you. Then you might want to do a spell that just makes you stand out a bit more. So you don't want to accidentally cast something that's more in the regard of this person cannot take their eyes off me. This person is obsessed with me. Now, as we all know, it's very difficult and not very likely to cast something that extreme by accident, but it's better just to not, it's better just to know what you are undertaking, what your possible consequences are of your actions. Understand your actions, understand your intention. You will understand what you are potentially getting out of the spell. Number 6, you haven't considered the consequences. You always want to consider what your consequences could be. Now, when I say this, I mostly am talking about love spells, curses, hexes, banishings, that sort of thing. I mean, for the most part, you're fine. You're not gonna ruin your whole life by casting a self-love spell. Most likely, you're not gonna accidentally kill somebody by casting a money spell. Yes, there are certain consequences to everything. If you cast a spell to make sure that your job interview is successful, yes, you are potentially taking away that job position from somebody else who would have gotten hired if you hadn't interfered with magic. That's a consequence. But at the end of the day, aren't we all kind of doing things in our own favor? I don't mean to sound like we're all a bunch of selfish assholes, but also at the end of the day, we also do have to keep our own self-interest in mind. So that is one reason why we do magic for certain things, is because you want to be successful in whatever it is. You have your own self-interest in mind. It's understandable. There's nothing wrong with you for that. But when I talk about consequences, I'm meaning things that are affecting other people, that could potentially affect you in a negative manner. Curses and hexes kind of go without saying. There's no explanation needed there. But please stop and consider what you are doing when you cast something like a love spell. Let's use that example that I mentioned earlier. If you cast a spell to make yourself more noticeable, great. You've just made yourself more noticeable. Hopefully, you attract the attention of the person that you're interested in, and, you're able to strike up a conversation. But if you cast a spell for them to notice you, and you want it to be love at first sight, that becomes manipulative and controlling. This is why certain traditions have rules against casting a spell, whether good or bad, on another person is a big no-no unless you have their permission. Now, I don't exactly follow those traditions, but it is still something that I always keep in mind. Consider casting a breakup spell on a couple. Now, obviously, if your reason for doing that is because, well, I have feelings for her and I want her to notice me, so she needs to break up with him or her or them first, that's not a good reason. That's very selfish, and you could be breaking apart a very healthy, happy couple. But let's say you have really good intentions. Say the relationship is abusive. Say it's toxic. Now, yes, that is a really good intention. And honestly, if I knew a couple that was in an abusive relationship and the victim was like pregnant and they were physically in danger, or they were physically in danger and I was afraid for their life, yeah, I would probably go ahead and cast that spell. But let's say this couple the victim is not necessarily in immediate danger, but they should leave this relationship. Well, if you cast a spell, you do all the work for them. Maybe the victim was days away from coming to that conclusion on their own and building up enough strength and determination to make that decision for themselves and to walk away, finding enough love for themselves to allow themselves to walk away. You just took that opportunity from them. You don't want to take potential growth away from another human being. I might get a lot of naysayers for having that opinion, but that's just my opinion. There's always a lot of context involved, and there's always a lot of things that you need to consider. Weigh out what are the potential consequences of casting it, what are the potential consequences of not casting it, and see which one outweighs the other. Because like I said, it's context. If that person is in immediate danger, cast the damn spell. Go for it. I'm not gonna judge you for it. But if they're not, I know it's painful to watch, but sometimes all you can really do is maybe cast a spell on yourself to give yourself patience and to give yourself the strength to stand by and be a good supportive friend for when they need it. Like, trust me, I've been that friend. I've been there. It is very difficult. Now, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to judge people. I'm not trying to give a morality lesson. This is just my opinion. If you disagree with me, it's perfectly fine. But that's just my advice there. So finally, number 7, when you're rushing it. This is sort of just like an accumulation of everything I've already listed for the most part. If you're rushing it, most likely you may not be in the right state of mind. You may not have considered all the consequences. You haven't thought through, what does this spell do? What am I trying to get out of it? How do these actions correlate to that? The more you rush into a spell, the less likely it is that it's going to be successful, and the more likely it is that you haven't fully thought about the consequences, fully thought about how is this going to get me what I want? Do all these steps make sense? Is there a way I could do this better, say this better, use more impactful ingredients? If you're rushed, you're not necessarily focused, you're not necessarily in the right state of mind, and you're not necessarily sure of yourself of, yes, this is gonna work. I feel good about this. This is what I want. I mean, we've all been there where we look outside and go, oh crap, tonight's the full moon. I was gonna do that spell tonight, but it's not ready, and I don't wanna wait for the next full moon, or I just don't have time. Well, look, often it's better to just wait until the next day, get a little bit more preparation done. That way you can make sure, like, sure, you're missing that one aspect, and unless your whole practice is shaped around the cycles of the moon, it's not gonna make it or break it, right? So if you lose that one aspect of it, but everything else in regards to this particular spell is lined up, it's exactly how you need it, and you're ready to go, that is what is going to help it be successful despite the timing not being perfect. All right, now if you've accidentally made the mistake of casting a spell in one of these scenarios and the spell worked and you kind of regret it, I do have a video to help you out with that right up here in that top corner. But hopefully that is not the case. So I'm gonna ask all of you, please hit that thumbs up. If you have other ideas or if you just disagree with me on any of these, I'd love to hear your opinions. Drop those down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you get notifications. And come and join us on Facebook. I'm really trying to grow that Facebook page. It's at Bewitching.Bemused. As always, I'm on Instagram and you can reach me by email. And other than that, I think that's everything. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend.